Progression over perfection here, where we don't strive to be perfect, we just strive to progress every day in every way imaginable. I pray everybody out there is doing well. Thank you for tuning in to the channel once again. I just finished wrapping up a little back workout, something slight. I wanted to talk to y'all real quick about one word: evolution. You know, sometimes you sit back and you get to thinking about your life, and it's a beautiful thing when you sit back and you think to yourself, wow, I've come a long way. Now, I'm not even just talking about as far as the automobile that I'm driving, or where I'm living, or whether or not I'm married, whether I have kids or not. I'm mainly talking about the person that I have become, the person that I'm becoming on a daily basis. I think back to things that once entertained me. Some still do, but others have found their way out of my life. It's been a long road. One thing for sure is that, for one, time is an illusion, because it don't feel like that much time has truly passed. I'm 37, but deep down inside, it feels like I'm still 22. Time is an illusion, but even more important, life is an adventure. Life is a journey. Anyone who tells you that you're always going to be the same person that you always have been is lying to you, or either they're just misinformed. Now, to some degree, yeah, we are always fragments of who we once were. You know, I still laugh the same. I'm still goofy than a motherfucker. You know, I still like most of the same movies, most of the same music. But as you get older, you know, if you truly pay attention and you evaluate yourself on a daily basis, or you evaluate yourself often, you'll realize just how much you've evolved. And that's a part of the plan. You're supposed to evolve. You're not supposed to stay the same. You know, I think over the years, and I mean, just in general, people attach a negative connotation to evolving. You know, what they quick to say: oh, your ass done changed. You brand new. You acting brand new. Well, maybe I am. Maybe I am. And what's wrong with that? What's wrong with that? You know, I ain't doing it to shine on you or throw shade your way. You know, it's just a part of my natural progression as a man, as a human being, more importantly. But I say all that to say, you know, I was thinking back, you know, sometimes, you know, life, the rigmarole that we get caught up in, you know, the whirlwind, you know, bills, children, our spouse, family, house obligations, mortgage, you know, the water bill, set bills, but, you know, all of the above, along with work, you know, that 9 to 5 that we clock into every day and we hate it. But no, you know, it doesn't give us the opportunity, I mean, unless we are conscious about it, to sit down and actually reflect on just how far we've come, how much we've evolved. Now, if you think to yourself, you know, well, I do that often and I don't really see much growth, or I don't really feel that I've evolved much. For one, I will challenge you to say, or I will challenge you to think to yourself, is it something that you're not really thinking about? That maybe it's so mundane and so routine that you haven't even realized you're no longer the person that you used to be? So first of all, I challenge you to really dive deep into that notion. And then secondly, I would say, if you really feel like you have not evolved or you're not changing, then you may want to proactively seek growth, seek change. But I'm here to tell you honestly, throughout my life, like I said, I'm 37 years old, growth, the changes that I've made in my life, in terms of who I am now versus who I used to be, I didn't do them on purpose. I didn't make those changes on purpose. At least I don't believe I did. I feel like life itself forced me to some degree to make these changes or make those changes. I mean, how have you changed or how have you evolved? You may be wondering. Well, I'm still, when I was growing up, my pops, my mom, mainly my pops, used to always tell me that I wore my heart on my sleeves. Very emotional, very sensitive guy, or little boy at the time. And that hasn't necessarily changed. I'm still sensitive to a degree. But for one, I choose wisely where to direct my sensitivity to, or who to direct my sensitivity to. I'm not the same with everybody. You can't be, I'm not the same in every situation. Maturity, wisdom, and just experience has taught me that I can't move that way. Not necessarily. But to some degree, I'm still sensitive. I'm still somewhat emotional. And, again, a lot of people, especially men, my fellas out there, you attach a negative connotations to being emotional or being sensitive. When, like some guys out here, I feel like that's actually embracing your masculine energy. I'm not talking about whining and crying about every damn thing that happened to you, but being authentic. If something is bothering you or something bothers you, show it. I know the whole adage of you never let them see you cry. Again, it's a time and place for all that shit. What I'm saying? I agree to some extent, but I just say, take that for instance. I know when to be sensitive. I know when to display emotion, and I know when to be more stoic. I say all this to say that, as you reflect, you sit back and you reflect and you pinpoint ways that you've changed as an individual, know that it's not the beginning. Know that it's only the beginning. It's not the end. There's going to be a lot more changes in your life, and hopefully they're more for the better than for the worse. That's all we can pray and hope for, or pray for. So just realize life is a journey. Life is an adventure. Who you are today may not necessarily be who you are tomorrow or next year. And something else I was going to add to that. That's one of the reasons why I never say never. They said never say never. Some things I can say never, but it's not, for the most part, I'm very open-minded, because I know that I have a tendency to change. I've seen it thus far. I handle things a lot better than I used to. I don't necessarily run to the bottle every time I have an issue. There was times in my life where that's exactly what I did. It was no sugarcoating it. I knew that it was my vice, and I knew that I was using it as a band-aid. And some people, mine isn't any worse than theirs, and theirs isn't any worse than mine. They run to other things, what I'm saying? Sex, drugs. But I just say, now, and what I find daily is that the goal should be, and I'm talking specifically to my men just for this particular point, it should be for man and woman, but I'm talking to my men because I am a man. You want to be solid. What I'm saying? That should be the ultimate goal, to be solid and to be comfortable in your own skin. This ain't high school. Who gives a fuck what Joe Blow over there doing? Or how Johnny over here feel about you? Fuck them. You know what I'm saying? You got a legacy to leave behind. You know what I'm saying? You ain't got time to be worrying about the naysayers or the haters. You know what I'm saying? Especially if you got kids. Especially like me if you got a son. You know what I'm saying? Because I got to teach him how to move the same way. You know, he can't spend a lot of time being overly concerned with other people's opinions of him. You know, a man is solid within himself. This is my personal opinion. And a man makes decisions based off of what he feels is right or wrong. He uses his own moral compass in order to lead others and also guide himself, along with the help of Jehovah God, of course. But I guess all I'm really saying is, as you can see, the title of this video is Evolve. Don't be afraid to evolve. Just like anything else, you know, there was periods in my life where, you know, I felt myself evolving one way or another. And just like anything, it's going to be uncomfortable. My son has just started preschool and he barely can stay for a whole day, you know, without screaming and crying for mama or grandma. You know, I usually don't have an opportunity, or I haven't had an opportunity to drop him off, so he don't cry for daddy. But why is that? You know, take a lesson from your child, from the toddlers, from the babies. You know, it's because it's unfamiliar, it's uncomfortable, you know, it's new. We the same way. Like I mentioned in one of my other videos, we just an evolved version of toddlers, or a toddler. I'm just an evolved version of my son. You know what I'm saying? I just had a few more experiences than he's had thus far. You know, it's going to be uncomfortable. You know, it's not going to be a walk in the park. And what typically makes it more difficult is how your family or your friends or your associates take it. You know what I'm saying? Because everybody to some degree, you know, they want you just like themselves. You know, change is difficult. Change is uncomfortable. You know, change requires work. You know, it requires honesty. And a lot of people aren't willing to change. So if they're not willing to change, what makes you so confident that they're cool with you changing? They're not. They're not. So you may get some pushback. You may get some backlash. But, you know, there's always the conversation of regret, you know, doing a hard thing so that you regret less later in life, or regret nothing later in life. You cannot spend your days stressing about who feels like you've changed, whether it's for the better or whether it's for the worse. This is your life. This is your movie. You are the star. You know what I'm saying? You are the star of your movie. You cannot concern yourself or be overly concerned. Long as you ain't hurting nobody, you know, you ain't stealing from nobody, you ain't causing stress in nobody else's life, and you feel deep down inside, based on your own moral compass, that you're doing what you feel you need to do, they got to kick rocks. And it's got to be straight up like that. You know what I'm saying? They got to kick rocks. Because your life, this one life, as far as we know, we don't know what's after this. You know what I'm saying? Some believe in heaven and hell. Some believe in paradise on earth. You know, some believe in reincarnation. Whatever you believe in, I know what's real right now, or at least what feels to be real. And it's this reality. You can't spend this life being overly concerned about what others think about you or how they perceive your own personal growth. Evolve anyway. Evolve anyway. I've come a long way, and I'm still pushing the envelope. You know, you have to step confidently into the future, into your future self. You know, You have to step confidently into your future self. Smile at the future, but more in the past, you know. Things are going to be a lot different. You know, you're going to probably have a new social group, people that you want to hang out with, people who are like-minded, probably going to have new activities, you know, things that you like to partake in. I remember a fun night for me, you know, me and my homie was drinking 40s and eating fried chicken until we got sick, and smoking, you know what I'm saying? That was like my highlight. Cruising the boulevard, going to the mall, you know, and this is like 18, 19. I'm 37 now. No, but, you know, I just say, you know, the reason why, or the purpose of this video is to encourage you to take some time out of your day to take inventory. Even if you got to write down what's working for you, or what has worked for you, and what's no longer serving you, what's not working for you no more. And be brutally honest, you know, because you got to remember one thing, man. You know, if you are truly invested in your personal development and becoming not even so much a better person, or a better version of yourself, but just an evolved version of yourself, because you never know what that evolved version gonna look like. You know what I'm saying? By your standards now, it may not be better, but once you become that person and you get settled in, you may realize, or you may, you know, see the light at the end of the tunnel and say, wow. Like they say, do something today that your future self thank you for, and you'll thank yourself for making those moves and becoming who you were meant to be all along. So take inventory, you know what I'm saying? And don't allow other people's opinions to weigh so heavily on you. You know, how do you feel about the changes that you've made? Where are you going in life? You know what I'm saying? Who are you becoming? Change is the only constant in the universe. Evolve. Don't be afraid, you know? And do the work. Do everything that is required of you. If you have a clear-cut vision of who it is that you want to be, do everything in your power to become that thing, or become that person, that thing. Become that person, you know? Take from this video what you will. It was just on my mind, it was on my heart. Hopefully it makes sense. Evolve. Evolve. And don't ask for permission. Just do it. Progression over perfection here, where we don't strive to be perfect, baby. We just strive to evolve because we know it's worth it. Peace and love. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe. Tap that notification bell so you'll be notified whenever I drop another one of these videos. Peace.